crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host, and I'm here with my co-host, Captain Ed Mehmet.
Hello, WABC listeners. We have another interesting guest today.
So today, we're diving into the world of politics and public safety with a heavyweight from the halls of Congress, Peter King. Congressman Peter King, welcome.
Kevin, great to be here. Captain, great to see you. It really is. Thank you. Good to be here.
So everyone, I'm sure, knows who you are, and if they don't, if you could just tell everyone a little bit about background. You grew up in Sunnyside, I believe, and we'll go from there.
I grew up in Sunnyside, went to high school and college in Brooklyn. My father was NYCPD for over 30 years. In fact, I think he had some very star students in the police academy. He was a commanding officer for physical training, and captain here was a prize student.
That's right. I was going to talk about it. You took the words out of my mouth.
Anyway, I went to law school at Notre Dame. I worked full-time when I was in college at the Railway Express, got enough money to go away to law school. And I've got two kids. I've been in politics well over 40 years. I was a councilman in Nassau County. I moved out to Nassau when I was in my 20s. I was councilman, county controller, then in Congress for 28 years, from 1992 to 2020. And during that time, there was just, the things that happened, which I never knew when I was signing up to go to Congress. It was an honor to be there, but we had, of course, 9/11, which was terrible. The event itself, the day itself was horrible, never knowing it was going to last another 18, 19 years, and still going on now, as far as all the health conditions. Then we had Hurricane Sandy. We had, the war in Iraq. We had the constant troubles going on. I had different presidents, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, Donald Trump. I had some, great experiences, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. It was time to retire. It's important to know when your time is up. Mine was up. I was still in good health at the time. I figured get out and enjoy my grandchildren. But it's a great experience. I get a little disappointed when I look down there now and see some of the craziness that goes on, unnecessary craziness.
Yeah. Captain?
Getting back to your dad.
Yeah.
As you know, but the audience should know that Congressman King's father was my boxing instructor in the police academy back in 1959.
Wow.
He was a big guy, built like the congressman, and I didn't know about it until I met the congressman a couple of years ago, and there was a picture on the wall, and I said, I recognize that guy. And it turned out it's his father.
Right, yeah.
So I have fond memories. He was a tough guy, your father.
He was a tough guy. He was a good guy, worked hard. I don't know what he would be doing today if he was out in the streets and saw what's going on, the way cops are treated today. That was a different era when you guys were there. It's certainly when he came on in the 1940s. And, there were tough times during the 50s and 60s, early 70s even, when cops were getting shot. But there wasn't this general disrespect for cops that you have today, which is one thing if the people are being disrespectful. But when the politicians endorse that or look the other way, that's, to me, absolutely unforgivable. Totally unforgivable.
How is it that you didn't go to the police department?
One thing, if you call in those days, you had to have 20/20 eyesight or close to it. I didn't. And also, my father sort of encouraged me to go to law school. But again, he was proud of being a cop. He loved it. There's no, until the day he died, he was talking about his years as a cop. He loved it. He had a lot of good friends. Also, you learn different things. Apart from getting the job done, also loyalty to the people you work with, and stand with people when things get tough.
Congressman, so 9/11, let's get back to 9/11.
Right.
So you were in Congress at 9/11.
Yep.
I was on the job as a detective in Midtown North at the time. And Captain, you were down at Ground Zero as well?
Yeah, I was retired, but I went as a volunteer.
But you were down there.
I was down there for about 2 months.
Wow.
Right. And as we know, 3,000 people died that day.
Yep.
And since then, probably double, triple that amount.
Yeah.
That we're aware of anyway. And with that said, I know you were very influential with the Droga bill, and you did a great job with that, and thank God we have that today. But with that said, now, they claim that they're running out of money, and because there's more and more people getting sick and dying from 9/11 illnesses, I know you're well aware of the fact that we're trying to get more funds for the 9/11 program. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, that was one of the most frustrating, ultimately successful, but frustrating and disappointing. When I was, anytime in Congress there was a disaster, a tornado, a hurricane somewhere, we immediately voted money for the people in that area. when it came to 9/11, they fought us tooth and nail. Other parts of the country somehow thinking that about these illnesses. And let's face it, you can always point fingers, but at the time, no one really, I don't think, fully realized the extent of what was going to happen from all the illnesses from it. And but it started to develop. It was clearly these illnesses related to 9/11, but it took us years to get the money. I don't think we got it finally until 2010. We finally got the first bill went through, and that was in the last vote of the last day of the session in 2010. And it was, we thought at the time the money in 2010 would be enough to keep us going for probably long enough, but it was the most we could get at the time anyway. So we took it. And then in 2015, we had to extend it again. And then in 2019, that was my last year in Congress, President Trump signed a bill where everyone was convinced there was enough money now in the fund. All the actuaries, everybody was looking at it, and they felt this will be enough money to go to the end of the century. I mean, that's how much we thought was in there. Now it turns out the illnesses, there's so many illnesses coming out. I mean, every week, like certainly in Nassau and Suffolk County alone, it seems like every week or two, there's somebody else dying, some cop or firefighter from 9/11, also construction workers and people who work down here, but especially first responders, the cops, the firemen, dying from these illnesses, and more people are being diagnosed with them. One of the benefits of this program is not just paying for the medical benefits, but actually having a program set up where doctors are uniquely qualified to deal with these illnesses. You can go to the best doctors in the world, and they may not detect these illnesses because some of them are so rare, some of the blood cancers and blood disorders that came from 9/11. And so now it turns out that they could be out of money in a few years. So we have to get it back. And I hear some of the same nonsense going on down in Congress. Well, they really need all of it. How do we know they're not faking it? All this stuff, which is so infuriating. It really is. I mean, on 9/11, everybody was united, but that sort of dissipated too soon. Again, when I think of the country, some of these states, we gave them, if there's a tornado, there's a flood, without even thinking, you give them the money and you figure, okay, if there's an abuse, we can correct it later on, but let's take care of the tragedy at the time. With this, they just assumed that it was phony claims. And so, I mean, it's done tremendous work, though. So many people have been treated and are still being treated. So many people are still being diagnosed. It's a gift that it was done. It's a shame it took so long. And now the fact that it may run out of money is totally unforgivable. Thank God. I mean, the New York delegation, we fight over a lot of ththings, but there's really total unity between, let's say, Chuck Schumer and Senator Gillibrand on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, you have Congressman Garbarino, Congressman D'Esposito, Congressman LaLota, Congressman Mike Lawler, all working together on this. So hopefully we can get it through, but it shouldn't even be an effort. This should be done automatically. This should not be involved. You shouldn't have to be using up favors. You shouldn't have to be twisting arms. You shouldn't have to be going to the media and complaining to get the job done. This should have been done. So that's probably even though it turned out to be ultimately successful, and hopefully this will too, the most disappointing in dealing with people who you thought were friendly, people who you thought who would remember what we had done for them when they had their disasters, somehow tried to make 9/11 into a New York situation. And we had to come out. We had every one of the 50 states had a 9/11 victim from 9/11 illnesses. Many of them were cops who come in, as you recall. I remember being at Madison Square Garden in December or late November of that year and seeing Chicago PD cars all over the place, and seeing Chicago cops with those checkered hats they wear. It was a whole, and then you realize it was almost like we were like, it was almost like a UN type thing, cops from all over the country being there. And again, it was great unity. Unfortunately, that didn't last long enough in Congress.
Yeah, that's sad.
Well, maybe they can divert some of the money being used for the illegals to go into the 9/11 fund.
Well, that's the thing that really is. I mean, that adds to being infuriated. People show up here and they're getting debit cards, they're getting bikes, they're getting hotel rooms, they're getting basically whatever they want and being treated above and beyond the veterans that we have. And again, these cops and firefighters and construction workers who are sick from 9/11 could run out of funding while funding is going to these illegal migrants. Indefensible.
You were quoted in 2016 saying you'd rather take cyanide than see Cruz become president.
Yeah, it was Ted Cruz. I mean, we agreed on some issues, but he was another guy who was like venomous against New York. He was against New York getting hurricane aid for Sandy. He basically was critical of New York after 9/11. So that attitude just bothers me. I mean, I never would have thought twice about voting aid to Texas when they needed it. And they had some terrible flooding down there. Not that you want to sound childish, but I did get some revenge when they had a massive flood. I guess it was in 2016 or 2017. We ended up voting the money, but I made a point of saying, if I was the same type of human being to take cruises, they wouldn't get a nickel. Fortunately for him, I'm a New Yorker and a nice guy.
Yeah, you've been quoted as saying a lot of interesting things.
Some good, some bad, but one of the highlights, I should say, of my career, if you want to call it a career, was when the Shaman Society honored me back in 2010, I guess that was.
Yeah, we got you the award.
Absolutely, it was great. Absolutely, it was a great honor. Yeah.
And the RDNY giving an award as
yes,
well,
sure,
right?
yes.
Yeah, I'm on the
yes,
board
right,
for
yeah,
RDNY.
right.
Getting back to the 9/11 bill, I think the leading sponsors was yourself, Carolyn Maloney, and
Yes.
Nadler, correct?
Nadler, right. It was bipartisan, yeah. Yeah.
But
Carolyn Maloney was good. Jerry Nadler was good. We worked together on that. And nobody tried to one up the other. Like Jerry never went out or Carol never went out and said something about me being a Republican. I never said anything about the Democrats. We just got it done. We had some obstacles along the way with others, even some in the Democratic Party who delayed it once because they didn't want to have to vote on some amendment they thought could hurt them. So they blocked it for a while. But most of the opposition came from Republicans from the South and the West.
Congressman, what's your thoughts on the NYPD today? With retention and recruitment, what's going on?
It must be tough. First of all, I have to admit I have a bias. I was a very close personal friend of Keyshawn Sewell. I thought she did an excellent job as commissioner.
Agree.
I think she's being missed by the department. NYPD is always going to be a great police department, but it has to be tough to bring people in, and that's why you see so many cops leaving the NYPD and going to other departments. It's first of all, the pay is still not what it should be. Let's be honest about that. The hours they work, the situations in which they are. I mean, one day in the NYPD could be a lifetime of experience in some other police department. I mean, what you have to, some of the patrols they have, some of the undercover work they have to do, just some of the neighborhoods they have to be in, and how their hands are being tied. I mean, I go back. I said this during the whole George Floyd situation, that no one saved more African American lives than the NYPD. I mean, when you see the murder count go from over 2,000 to 300, and when like 60-70% of the murder victims have been African American or other minorities, so that means that's hundreds and hundreds of lives were saved every year because of the NYPD. Then they said that how the NYPD had been carrying out these tactics under Ray Kelly. When Ray Kelly left office, he had a 70% favorable rating in the African American community. So, I mean, I can't speak. I'm not African American. If I were living in one of those communities where there was high crime and there had to be a larger police presence because of that, I would say save. If I have young kids, I'd rather have those cops out there in the street than not have them and have your kids get beat up or killed or robbed or whatever. So, no, I think the NYPD, it's going to be hard, I think, to stay at the levels they have to be because it's going to be hard to recruit people, harder to keep people. And the politicians, what they've done as far as issues like immunity and just the whole attitude. For a while there, if anybody made an accusation against a cop, you assume that the cop is wrong. That was just the way the treatment was. My daughter has moved to North Carolina. She lives outside of Charlotte, and a place called Waxhaw. And so I went down to the local Waxhaw Police Department, 33 cops, 11 NYPD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's... So I walked in expecting his southern drawl. Hey, you guys! Oh my God! I'm back in Brooklyn and Queens.
Yeah.
That's a third of the department.
Yeah, third of the department, and you can tell that they are. They have a lot to say. I mean, people. There's no friction. They are really respected by the other cops, and they take their cues from these New York guys. Yeah.
I mean, back in my day, a lot of guys went to Nassau and Suffolk County Police. Now, like
Pat
you
Ryder,
said,
you mentioned Commissioner Ryder. Yeah.
Right, Commissioner Ryder. Now, guys are going to, like you just said, Carolinas and Florida and Georgia.
Many departments are seeking New York cops. They actually come into the city to try to recruit.
Yeah, they actually,
the cops that just graduated from the police academy.
They sent a recruiting team. Of all the things the NYPD did, and I got to work with them because I was on the Homeland Security Committee, which was created after 9/11, then became chairman of the 9/11 of the Homeland Security Committee. What the NYPD did as far as terrorism should be a model for the world. I mean, they had. Ray Kelly ended up having almost 2,000 cops working on counterterrorism in one capacity or another. City of Chicago had 4. I mean, just to make an example. Other cities were relying totally on the FBI, the JTTF. Ray Kelly had set up his own counterterrorism units and forces and intel units. And, the work they did, there's at least 19, 20, more than that, maybe plots have been stopped. And any one of them could have been a disaster. I remember once in 2009, I guess it was, I was with Ray at an event at Mayor Bloomberg's house. And he seemed, Ray is usually very confident. He seemed a little nervous this night, and he asked me to go out in the street with him. So he's telling me out in the, I guess Bloomberg lived on 75th Street or 5th Avenue, somewhere up there. And that there were guys coming from Colorado with liquid explosives to blow up the New York City subway system. They knew that there was some already in New York. There was one guy they were following from Colorado. And the idea is, do you lock them up now, or do you wait till the guy gets here? If you wait too long, it could be a disaster. But if you go too soon, you may not be able to actually prove what you wanted to prove. And that was as apprehensive as I've ever seen Ray Kelly. And the next day, they did stop them. They stopped them. They locked up all of them. And one story which I tell at the time was they stopped it. That was a total success. But they weren't as successful as getting everyone that they wanted to, because there was one imam that they trusted, that the police were working with. And they were talking to him, trying to get information. And they trusted this guy 1,000%. He tipped off some of the bad guys. And so that's, to me, it was also a lesson to me. But anyway, they stopped it. Now, nobody even thinks of that incident. If they had made it through, can you imagine putting liquid explosives in the New York City subway system? It wouldn't take that much to cause thousands of deaths. And also the fact that he had police all over the world. He had them in Israel. He had them in London. He had them in Paris, I believe. I remember I was with President Bush in 2004 when they had the bombings in Madrid. And they were waiting for the FBI to get somebody there to find out what happened. Ray Kelly had a guy on the ground already in Madrid calling back in, saying what the story was, to take different precautionary steps on the New York City subway system in advance that they had already spotted was happening in Madrid. So, again, it's been tremendous. Unfortunately, they were attacked for doing too much, for intruding on people's privacy. I mean, to me, I would say if you're going to be looking for a member of the Ku Klux Klan, you're not going to go to Harlem. If you're looking for a Islamist terrorist from a particular country, you want to go to the community in New York where those people have lived. That makes common sense. 99% of them could be good people, but you want to. That's probably where So you have to have people in there. You have to have a surveillance of the neighborhoods. You have to know what's going on. Well, that was considered a violation of constitutional rights, and that, to me, stopping that was really a harm. I think hopefully cops are still able to do some things, but what Ray had going there and the cooperation we had in stopping these threats, again, it should be a model for the country and the world. You had cops coming from all over the world to find out how New York was doing it. And it's, I remember I was in London, Scotland Yard, and there was an NYPD guy over there, and they were taking their cues from him. I mean, here they are in London, and you have a NYPD cop. He was a liaison, and every bit of evidence was always tracked down and run down. But those stories really went out. To the extent they were in the paper at all, it was about how cops are violating the innocent people living in these neighborhoods. Meanwhile, cops stopped like over 20 serious attacks, including one to blow up the Brooklyn Bridge. That was
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Support American-made tariff-free clothing with American Giant. They aren't affected by tariffs because their clothing products never left the U.S. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com.
When you were chair of the House Intelligence Committee,
Homeland Security Committee.
I'm sorry, the Homeland Security Committee. You had radicalization hearings, correct?
Yeah,
I think you got a lot of criticism over that.
Yeah, they even had a giant rally in Times Square against me. I had, listen, the reality which no one wanted to talk about was that, and I can understand people not want to turn on their own, but the fact is that in the Muslim community, the police and law enforcement were not getting the cooperation they needed from the community. And you just can't afford that in New York. So the hearings were to determine the cooperation or lack of cooperation from within the Muslim community. The first hearing I had, two key witnesses were Muslims themselves. One was a person whose nephew had gone to join Al-Shabaab, and he was recruited out of Minneapolis to go. He's over in Al-Shabaab. The uncle was told nothing about it at all, and then he was killed over there. He tried to come home and he got killed, and then they were told by the local authority, the local Muslim authorities, the community was told not to cooperate with the police, not to cooperate with the FBI. That was just one example, and he went into detail about that. Another was an African-American guy from, I think he was from South Carolina. His son was radicalized, and he was a guy who actually attacked an Army recruiting base and killed a number of soldiers in Arkansas. That was that. So he had a Muslim and an African-American being the main witness. Then we had a Dr. Judy Jassa, who was a Muslim scholar who was testifying. And the other side could bring in, and they brought in some sheriff from California who ended up going to jail later on for something else. But the intensity, I mean, the place was packed. It was all over television. I was being attacked by everybody. I was against human rights. I was against Muslims. I was against... And it was interesting. The first few votes I cast in Congress were controversial in favor of the Muslims. Not going into detail, I supported the Muslims. They were being attacked in Bosnia. I mean, to me, it had nothing to do with your religion. Listen, if these are Irish guys and they were involved and they were working against the United States, lock them up. I don't care. Yeah. But this became, suddenly I was anti-Muslim. I was being a bigot. And so I actually had a series of 4 hearings. One was the community overall. Then it was in prisons, how a lot of... Muslims are being recruited. They were trying to recruit them in prisons and other aspects of society. Another one was in the military. We had one how there was a recruiting going on in the military, and that's where Joel. That's just a bipartisan hearing. That was bicameral. Joe Lieberman was chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. I was of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. I was chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee. We had a joint hearing. He was a great guy to work with, and so that caused a lot of controversy and. A lot of different threats I was getting, that type of thing. I was also on the Intelligence Committee. I was never chairman, but I was on that committee. And that's also where you learn how it's a dangerous world we live in. And as we're sitting here now, we're going to go home and have dinner, have a drink or whatever. There are people around the world who are doing nothing else but figuring out how they can kill us, how they can attack us. That's their only purpose in life. And we have to be aware of that. And that's why, that's one thing President Bush really did too, set up worldwide communication with different countries, even if they don't agree with us on a lot. They don't want terrorists attacking them. Remember during the Iraq War when Bush and I guess it was Chirac, the head of France, were not getting along at all. We were getting tremendous cooperation from France when it came to intelligence, and we were cooperating with them because we realized it's a common enemy.
I'd like to bring out your support of Israel as a Gentile. You're considered a righteous Gentile among the people of the Jewish faith, including me. And as a result of your support of Israel, I recommended you for an award that was given to you by the Shomrim Society of the New York City Police Department. And the Shomrim Society is a society that represents the Jewish police officers. And I was very proud of that accomplishment, and it was a great time. It was in 2010, I believe. 2010,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was... In fact, that was 3 months before I was actually elected chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. I was on the committee, but that was 2 days before Election Day, as I recall. And the Republicans won big in the election. I became chairman of the committee because of that. No, that was an honor. Listen, Israel, obviously, I think the whole world is indebted and has an obligation to the Jewish people. But even if we're not, Israel is our best ally in the most dangerous part of the world. I mean, they are surrounded either by enemies or countries that are only supporting us because they're getting paid to support us. I mean, there's no real ally there except for Israel. And they are incredibly, the cooperation we get from them on intelligence issues, on military issues, I mean, they do things that otherwise the United States would have to do it. And they live in, it's, I think, safe to say, the worst neighborhood in the world, the most dangerous neighborhood in the world. They're surrounded. I mean, they are Iran, you go through Syria, you go through a whole list of evil leadership in countries that surround them. And but it's in our national interest. Even if Israel was not Jewish, if it was, if they were Buddhists, if they were Hindus, if they were Catholics, whatever, that country is so important to us. And the fact that we share, the Judeo-Christian religions together and our traditions, to me, it's disgraceful for any American administration not to fully support Israel. And I couldn't believe that this is only, 20-something years after 9/11, that you would see Hamas demonstrators in the streets of New York, these waving Islamist flags and Palestinian flags, and being supported by educators, being sort of given 50-50 treatment by the media, and by having politicians, including people in, I'm not saying this is Republican because we're not all saints either, but to have an element of the Democratic Party which is pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, and anti-Israel. To me, that's beyond me. I never thought, if you had asked me on September 12th, 2001, whether or not you would ever see Hamas demonstrators on the streets of New York or people supporting Hezbollah, I thought it would be impossible. But it's out there, and that's a real danger to the country. That's another situation. The cops are in a bad situation. You have these people, in many cases, running loose, and some of the demonstrations went on, some of the injuries were caused and property damage was caused. What was done at places like Columbia and NYU, it's shameful. And again, taking those universities, taking Columbia as an example, I mean, we had to basically twist arms to get any level of cooperation from the school. They should have been day one saying to the cops, do what you can do, help us. We don't want this. Instead, they're making excuses for these people.
Well, Columbia shouldn't let it get to that point.
No, not at
First
all.
of all,
day one they should have.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened in 1968 when they took over the Columbia.
Yeah.
I was there at the time. The school waited over a week before they called in the police. And it's a known fact that when you wait, people get bolder. The rioters get bolder. You have to take swift and sure action to put things down, and that's these educators. They do this all the time. They want to negotiate. You can't negotiate with people like that. Yeah,
if you're against violence, you don't want people being hurt, the quickest thing is to move right away. The longer you wait, I mean, the cops are doing the best job in the world, but a lot of people are going to be hurt. The longer you wait, the more people are going to get hurt, innocent and non innocent. So if you're really against violence, if you really want people to be protected, you move quickly. You don't let that stuff get out of hand.
You mentioned before the Irish. You were involved with the Irish making peace in Ireland, correct?
Yeah, I was with Bill Clinton. Yeah, he was did a great job. He and I didn't agree on many issues, but he was very good on Northern Ireland, and that was going on for 800 years. And I actually had uncles who fought back for the Irish War of Independence back in the 1920s, so I had some familiarity with the issue. I'd gone over there a number of times. But for the most part, the United States would defer to the British, and the British were saying, well, things really weren't that bad. Well, they were. And Britain was sort of stuck in Northern Ireland. I mean, without getting into all the details, Bill Clinton was the first to realize that the British wanted some third party to intervene, to be the honest broker. They could never admit that. I mean, when Bill Clinton was giving visas to people who were considered terrorists by the British publicly protested privately. They thought it was the right thing to do. That set up the talks, and that was beginning in 1993, 1994. 1998 was the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. I remember being up many nights, some till 2 o'clock in the morning, going back and forth between Belfast and Washington and Dublin on the phone. I was over there also on the ground physically sometimes. For those last few days, now I'm Catholic. You wouldn't fully appreciate this because you're dealing with Passover. I'm dealing with Easter. But that was supposed to be the Holy Thursday Agreement. The Irish never get things done in time. It became the Good Friday Agreement. It didn't make it done in time. So that was.
I like it. That's great.
But no, I mean, you think of all the thousands of people who were killed on all sides. And I got to know people. It was not just Protestant and Catholic. That's the way it was described. It was really so much. It was like hundreds of years of history were there. And the British didn't know what to do with it. They didn't want to let Northern Ireland go, but they didn't know what to do with the trouble. And Clinton was the one who really got himself involved. Like Senator George Mitchell was a mediator. You had the British Prime Minister Tony Blair. He did realize that things had to change. You had the Irish Prime Minister Bertie Ahern. Because a lot of people in the south of Ireland didn't want to get involved either. They thought, let them have their own problems up there. People always thought Ireland wanted to be united, but the ones down south figured, hey, we got it okay. If you bring these people in, we're going to have more trouble. So there was the only person they could really count on was Bill Clinton. I mean, it was really, and for a while, you had people in Northern Ireland who had never, ever spoken to each other, and they could have been shot if they were seen talking to each other. They would meet in Washington with Bill Clinton on St. Patrick's Day. People who had never spoken other than that, and they wouldn't even talk about having the meetings because they couldn't admit back home that they were carrying on these meetings. So he was able to do it. Somehow he understood it. I had Irish leaders tell me that they lived their whole lives in Ireland, didn't understand all that was going on, but somehow, I don't know if there's a compliment to Bill Clinton or what, but his mind let him figure out all the crazy stuff that was going on. Yeah. It made sense to Bill Clinton. He could actually figure it out. So no, but I was very proud of that, and But I give Bill Clinton so much of the credit. Tony Blair was also very good on that.
Occupy Wall Street.
Oh yeah,
there was a lot of criticism on that too, right?
Yeah, I was considered to be not understanding of the poor people who are occupying Wall Street, and my only criticism was, they waited so long to go in. I mean, the cops when they finally went in, they cleared it out really in almost no time, but it had gone on for so long. It was so insulting too. I mean, that whole what was the name of the park down there? Zuccotti Park. Yeah, I think John Zuccotti had been a deputy mayor at one time. They named the park after him, and these lunatics took over the park. No, that was. It's part of the country, or people in the country, leadership not standing up. I mean, listen, you have the right to protest, but not every protest has a legitimate goal. So if somebody's protesting for something wrong, say it. And if they're violating the law, enforce the law and get them out of there.
And you were quoted as referring to them as dirtbags and losers.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. I was afraid. Yeah. I had no idea what you were going to find there, but I did say dirtbags and losers, yeah.
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
I was down there one night, and you were right. I went to see what was going on. And you also used the term psychobabble.
Yeah, psychobabble, yeah. That was it.
So we've had Congressman Anthony D'Esposito on before.
Anthony's
He's
good
doing
guy.
a great job down there.
He's
He's
detective.
NYPD.
in East New York, yeah.
Doing a great job down there. I know you guys are friends and,
very good
support
friends,
each
yeah.
other. We've also had Laura Curran on, as well as Bruce Blakeman,
Yeah, we were lucky in
Democrat.
Nassau County in that Laura was a Democrat, but very much of a centrist Democrat. She never went off the deep end.
Right.
Bruce has done a great job.
Yes.
And Bruce has a personal interest in this. His nephew was killed in 9/11. He was a court officer. And Bruce was also on the board of the Port Authority at that time. So Bruce, he's very, very supportive of the police. Laura was too. I give her credit during the George Floyd riots. She didn't, they could have found a quote or two that she may have said the wrong thing here or there, but no, she stood with the cops, and Nassau County never got out of hand. She had Pat Ryder as her commissioner, and then Pat now under Bruce.
Right, kept the same commission, right, which is great.
No, but Anthony D'Esposito, it's good to have he's on the Homeland Security Committee,
right,
which is really good to have him there. He brings some common sense. The border is important. Obviously, the border is important. We can't forget New York. We can't forget the ports. We can't forget New Jersey. I mean, we are still the number one terrorist target in the world, and we have so many iconic structures here, whether it's churches, temples, museums. Then you have the ports. You have, we're the center of commerce still, and they could cause so much, not just loss of human life, but so much economic and so much psychological damage. So it's good having a guy like Anthony on the committee to remind people that New York is still the number one threat.
Hey, the border's closed, right?
Oh,
come on. We see right here what's going on in New York City.
One of the things that you said I thought was great. You were very critical of the publicity that Michael Jackson was given after he died. And the reason I bring this up is because 3 days before he died, Ed McMahon died. You remember?
True, yeah.
And Ed McMahon was a former Marine aviation.
Right.
He served during World War II, and then he was recalled to Korea, where he flew 84 missions.
Wow.
Now, the reason why I bring this up is I was in Marine aviation, and I can appreciate it. And the fact that here is an American hero who got very little publicity, and Michael Jackson, who was a weirdo, as we both believe, got publicity for 2 weeks or more.
Yeah, I guess it was it's funny. I got tremendous amounts of publicity, also a lot of death threats and everything else. It was some guy, actually, Ray Kelly had a guy who came from California threatening to kill me. That's how crazy it got. But no, that was first of all, I have the same feeling as you do. And I've just been at some veterans event, and you've seen what these guys have gone through. And suddenly Michael Jackson is a hero. They're talking about in Congress giving him a gold medal or something, or some citation. So I was actually working out in the gym on Sunday morning, and I called a person on my staff. I said, "Can you meet me outside the American Legion Hall?" And I just gave like a 2 or 3 minute rant into a video camera. It was the most homemade thing in the world. And that's it. I said it. I got it out of my system. I thought, okay, at least I feel better now I said that. And she put it online, which was totally beyond me. This is, 2011, 2009, 10? I don't know when it was. Anyway, it was maybe even earlier. Anyway, whenever he died. It was around that time. And
it was April.
I think it was in June or July, I think, that he died.
I think I have the date here. It was July 5th, 2009.
2009. So anyway, I said it. I forgot about it. And she put it online, which I didn't even fully understand at that time what that meant. Next thing I know, I'm getting calls from the Today Show, from Good Morning America. All the local TV stations are coming, and it really got not out of hand, but it was going on. For once in my life, and once in my political life, I actually, after the first or second day, stopped doing interviews because I didn't want to seem like I was just taking advantage of it. Also, I knew that this story was going to last for 4 or 5 days anyway. It really hit a raw nerve with people, but I was the only one who said it at the time. And people, I was seeing it, wow, this is, and it started to feed on itself, one from one to the other. I don't know how many, we got, not my staff, I had like a weird staff. They kept all the phone calls of hostile threats I was getting, and they used to play them, like, for laughs, all these things that people said about me, the hostility, but the support was terrific on that. And that's what I think a lot of people in this country, a lot of people in politics don't realize that American people often feel strongly about issues that the mainstream media isn't talking about. I mean, nobody in the mainstream media said a word critical of Michael Jackson. Here's a guy who was a child molester. I mean, you go through a whole thing about him. There's nothing at all. He can sing and dance, okay, but a lot of people can do that. But they treated him like he was this international national hero. So I just thought somebody had to speak out, and it hit a raw nerve with a lot of people. I mean, it really struck a responsive chord, as they say.
Well, it certainly hit a raw nerve with me. I couldn't believe it. I mean, here they're ignoring an American war hero.
Yeah.
Not mentioning him in the news, but not honoring him. And Jackson gets all the the accolades.
And I just come because it was around the 4th of July, time of the 4th of July. You go to different veterans events and you see what these guys have been going through, especially when you're from Iraq. Guys are still coming back from Iraq, and they were PTSD, physical wounds, mental wounds. Some family members there, lost people in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the media was talking about was Michael Jackson, which to me was time to end that. So I did it, but if you would believe me, after I made that statement into the camera, I forgot all about it. I mean, I felt good. I got out of my system. At least I did that. And home, I watched the ball game. And then all of a sudden,
I remembered it.
It all hit the fan.
You also got involved in the Eric Garner case.
Yeah, I did. First of all, without bringing everything up, the fact is there was nothing racial about that. It was minority store owners going to an African-American chief of the department in New York who called the precinct and said, get that guy out of there. It was the local business people wanted him out of there. He was over 300 pounds. He was resisting arrest. They were going back into a plate glass window, and they went down. If there was a chokehold, it was maybe for 2 seconds, whatever. The cop did what anyone should have done to bring him down. And the way that was so distorted, and again, he died. The guy was he was a bad diabetic, well over 100 pounds overweight, and somehow the cop is being blamed for that. And they made it this racial issue and also the highest ranking person there was an African-American sergeant. Right. And so that's, whatever was done, it was not racial, and yet that's the way it was played all over the country with riots and demonstrations. Dan Donovan was the DA. I give him credit for this tremendously. The grand jury did not indict, and then you had the mayor and others. That's why those 2 poor cops who were killed in Brooklyn was a direct result of the remarks that were made after Pantaleone, who was the cop who was not indicted. Grand jury didn't indict him. Riots broke out, demonstrations broke out, and those two cops were killed in Brooklyn in cold blood. Inspired by the guy who killed them was inspired by the remarks that some of the elected officials were saying about the cops. So that was, and again, another one. I mean, basically nobody was defending the cops in that situation. And that was, and you talk about, I mean, first of all, the chokehold, cops are trained for years, the chokehold is appropriate in some time. But in that case, it was, looking back on it, people analyzing, it was maybe 1 or 2 seconds as they were going down. Because the cop, they both would have gone through the plate glass window. And he had him, he came down, as they're coming down. And he died, he was sitting on the sidewalk for 20 minutes. Then he died in the ambulance on the way to the, also this whole thing, I can't breathe. Well, if you can't breathe, you can't say you can't breathe. I mean, you can't talk if you can't breathe.
How about you're under arrest? Comply.
Oh, that's the other, exactly. I mean, that was all forgotten. That was all forgotten.
Right.
And they said, the cops are just picking on the guy because he's selling cigarettes. It was a local business people. They said, get this guy out of here. He's killing our business.
Your father would probably punch him out.
Oh, that's a different story. Yeah, thank God. I mean, if he were around when that happened, and wow, all those guys down in the academy at that time, if they just didn't. My father also formed the first what do you call it? The unit, ceremonial unit. The first, they never had a ceremonial unit until 1973. What they used to do is they get 6 guys out of the academy who had been in the military, make them pallbearers, and that was it. Then when you had the increase in cops being shot, they actually formed a ceremonial unit, and he became the first commanding officer of that.
Wow.
And now they... So the guys in our unit gave me a jacket and all that, and honoring my father. So that was, but that was the last 2 years of his career. He was doing that. So
yeah, ceremonial, they do a great job, a nice job,
Yeah, it's really. I mean, it's at a level. It's again, it's the best of the best, really.
I have one final topic I'd like to mention. You took a stand on the National Football League about the football players kneeling when the Star Spangled Banner was played. I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, I mean, that whole thing, first of all, to be kneeling and then to have the NFL tolerate it. And maybe I'm a minority. I've stopped watching the NFL. I got so turned off by Kaepernick and that whole crowd. And also I remember, I'll say this about the Jets, when the Jets said they would pay the fines of anyone who was fined by the NFL for kneeling during the national anthem. And they were criticized. No, we would defend anyone. The right of free speech. Would they really defend somebody if he came out in favor of the Ku Klux Klan or the American Nazi Party or any other group? No, they were doing good. They were afraid of Black Lives Matter, and to me, that was cowardly and was wrong. We can have a lot of differences in this country, but no country does more for more people in the United States, and not to salute the flag or not to show respect for the flag, to me, is indefensible. And why should we be paying money to those guys if they're going to treat the American flag that way?
Agreed.
Congressman, you've seen it all, and you tell it like it is, and we love that about you. You just
thank you, Kevin.
tell it the way
Appreciate
it
that.
is.
Thank you.
That's the bottom line.
And thank you two guys for your service over the years. I talk about it. You guys do it, so thank you.
No, but you're a great congressman.
Yeah, thank you for always being there for law enforcement throughout the country. We appreciate that.
How many years? 23 years in Congress?
28 years in Congress.
28.
Yeah, 28 years. Yeah, it's and I get out in reasonably good health. I've had a few bumps since then, but I'm back in good health now, so I'm ready. Maybe I'll go back and be a cop now.
Sure, we can take it usually, believe me. But I'd like to thank Congressman Peter King for being here today, our guest on Cop Talk. My co-host, Ed Mamet, Captain Ed Mamet. I'd like to thank everyone for listening today. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. And you can follow us on Twitter at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, God bless you, God bless America, and God bless law enforcement throughout the world. Thank you.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.